Prison food exposed, what America's most dangerous inmates really eat. The meal that started a riot. The metal trays hit the tables like gunshots. Inside the chow hall of Pelican Bay State Prison, the smell wasn't food, it was fear. Steam rose from a pile of something grayish, sticky, and cold. They called it beef stew. But even the inmates who'd eaten rats in solitary said this wasn't beef. Across the room, one man, nicknamed Ghost, lifted his tray, stared at it, and yelled, "This ain't food. This is poison." Within seconds, the room erupted. Trays slammed, tables flipped, guards rushed in. And as they fired pepper spray into the crowd, the riot wasn't about gang colors or respect, it was about what was on those plates. For the first time, America's most dangerous inmates weren't fighting each other. They were fighting the food. Beat, pause for tension. But what was really being served behind those prison walls? And how did a simple meal become the spark that exposed an entire system of neglect and corruption? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning, to the kitchens of America's most feared prisons, where food isn't just survival, it's control. Welcome to the kitchen of hell. Before dawn, the prison kitchen comes alive. Not with chefs, not with laughter, but with inmates in hairnets and shackles. The air is thick with the smell of burnt oil, moldy bread, and bleach. This isn't breakfast. It's punishment served 3 times a day. In prisons like Pelican Bay, ADX Florence, and Rikers Island, the kitchen isn't just a place to eat. It's a weapon. They say you can break a man by isolating him, but the old-timers will tell you, starve him slow and he'll break faster. Inside the line, inmates are forced to cook meals they wouldn't feed a dog. Spoiled vegetables, poultry with green spots, meat that arrives in boxes labeled, not for human consumption. Sometimes, the boxes are frozen solid. Sometimes they're leaking red. But either way, they end up on the tray. When inmates complain, officers say the same thing every time. You're lucky you're eating it all. And that's the truth. Because prison food isn't about nourishment, it's about control. If you make a man's stomach hurt, you make him weak. If you make him hungry, you make him quiet. But inside those walls, there's a secret most people don't know. Some inmates don't stay quiet. Some fight back. And that's exactly how Ghost's story began. Ghost's recipe for revenge. Ghost wasn't just another inmate, he was a survivor. A man who'd spent years bouncing between solitary cells and lockdowns. He'd seen everything except a decent meal. One day, while serving his time in Pelican Bay's SHU, the security housing unit, he got tired of being fed what he called trash in a tray. That morning, breakfast was oatmeal, gray, cold, and with something moving inside it. He lifted the spoon and saw a cockroach. The guards laughed. The inmates didn't. Something in that moment changed him. Ghost started documenting every meal. He'd scribble in a small notebook, writing what they served, how it looked, how it smelled. Over months, the notebook filled with words like mold, rotten, slop, expired. Then one day he got proof. A food delivery came in from a supplier meant for animal feed. Boxes marked discarded meat. Ghost saw the label, memorized it, and that night he told everyone in the yard. The rumor spread like wildfire. Inmates started refusing meals. And when you refuse to eat in prison, that's not a protest, it's a declaration of war. Guards tried to cover it up, but it was too late. The whole block was talking. That's when the warden made a decision that would change everything. He ordered a new meal to be served. Something called Nutriloaf. They said it had everything an inmate needed to survive. Protein, carbs, vitamins. But what it really had was despair. Because once Ghost bit into that loaf, he realized it wasn't just bad food. It was a message. A message from the system itself. Eat what we give you, or starve. The secret behind Nutriloaf. If you've never heard of Nutriloaf, that's by design. It's one of America's most controversial prison meals. So bad that it's been banned in several states. Imagine taking leftover beans, carrots, powdered milk, bread, meat scraps, and blending them together into a thick paste. Then baking it into a solid brick. That's Nutriloaf. A punishment meal. served cold. No seasoning. No dignity. Inmates call it the loaf of shame. And Ghost? He got it 3 times a day. At first, he tried to stomach it, but after a week, he couldn't. His stomach twisted. He vomited blood. And when he begged the nurse for help, she said, "You should have eaten the stew." That line stuck with him, because it proved what he already knew. This wasn't about nutrition. It was about breaking men without leaving bruises. When word of Nutriloaf spread through the blocks, tempers flared. The Aryans, the blacks, the Latinos, everyone who usually hated each other, suddenly had one enemy in common: the kitchen. They started hiding parts of the loaf, drying it, and carving it into weapons. They called them brick blades, made from the same thing they were forced to eat. And then one morning, a guard walked in to serve breakfast, and never walked out again. The cover-up in the kitchen. The sirens didn't stop for hours. After the guard went down, the prison went into full lockdown. Every cell sealed. Every inmate searched. Every kitchen worker dragged out in chains. The warden's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "This is your fault. You want to starve? Fine, no one eats until we find who did this." For 72 hours, Pelican Bay went silent. No meals. No movement. No light. Just the sound of growling stomachs and dripping pipes. But Ghost, he wasn't afraid. He knew the truth would eventually come out, because someone on the inside had seen everything. That someone was Reyes, a young inmate who worked in the prison kitchen. He was the one who handled the delivery logs, and what he found one night made him freeze. The invoices didn't match the food labels. Boxes marked as beef were actually soy filler. Fresh produce was weeks past expiration. And half the supplier names? When Reyes showed the papers to a guard he trusted, the next morning, that guard was transferred. No warning. No goodbye. Gone. Ghost realized what was happening. The food wasn't just bad, it was part of a business. Millions of dollars in state contracts going to companies that cut corners, reused rotten stock, and pocketed the difference. And the prison administration? They looked the other way, because as long as the inmates didn't die, the books stayed clean. But that's the thing about the human body, it can only take so much. And one night, it finally broke. The meal that killed. Dinner that night was a chicken casserole. At least, that's what the menu said. By midnight, 12 inmates were vomiting blood. 2 collapsed in their cells. And one, an old man everyone called Slim, stopped breathing before the medics arrived. When Ghost saw them carry Slim's body out, wrapped in a torn bedsheet, he made a vow. If the food's killing us, we're gonna make the world taste it too. And from that moment, the plan began. Ghost and Reyes decided to smuggle the truth out. The photos, the invoices, even a piece of the Nutriloaf itself. But in a place where every move is watched, getting evidence out was almost impossible. Almost. Because there was one man who could move things through any wall. Darnell, a kitchen porter with connections to guards, gangs, and the outside world. He could get anything inside or outside. For the right price. When Ghost approached him, Darnell laughed. "You sure you want to open that door, Ghost? Once this gets out, they'll bury you deeper than ADX." Ghost didn't blink. Let them try. And so, the kitchen became their battlefield. Trays, knives, and secrets all part of the same war. But before the evidence could escape the walls, someone snitched. And that's when everything turned deadly again. The rat in the kitchen. They came for Ghost at dawn. Flashlights in his face. Batons slamming the door. He didn't resist, he already knew what it meant. Someone had told them. Someone inside the plan had betrayed him. Reyes was gone. Darnell was bleeding in the hallway. And the warden was waiting in the interrogation room, smiling. On the table sat Ghost's notebook, the one with every detail of every meal. The warden flipped through it, page by page, then said, "You think anyone cares what you eat? The world thinks you're animals. So eat like one." Then he tore the notebook in half and threw it in the trash. But what the warden didn't know was that Ghost had already made a copy. Hidden inside a plastic bag, sealed in a loaf of bread, waiting in the delivery truck set to leave that morning. And that truck was already rolling out of Pelican Bay's gates. For the first time, hope was leaving the prison. Proof of everything. Rotten food. Faked records. Stolen money. But hope has enemies. As the truck reached the checkpoint, guards ordered it to stop. Someone had tipped them off again. They searched the boxes one by one, until they found it. The loaf. The bag. The notebook. And just like that, the truth was gone again. Ghost was thrown into the hole, solitary confinement. No light. No tray. No sound. But he didn't break. He started writing again, on toilet paper, with a broken pen refill he'd hidden under his tongue. Because if the system wanted to bury the truth, he was going to dig it out, one word at a time. In prison, food isn't just about staying alive. It's about who gets to decide if you deserve to. The truth escapes the walls. Weeks passed in silence. Ghost sat in his solitary cell, surviving on water and a few bites of cold bread. Every sound, the clank of metal, the shuffle of boots, echoed in his skull. He didn't know what day it was. He only knew one thing: the truth couldn't die with him. Then one morning, something strange happened. A guard, new, young, and nervous, slipped a folded piece of paper under his door. It read only 2 words. "We see you." Ghost's heart stopped. That meant someone outside already knew. Somehow, his story had escaped the walls. A week later, a reporter from a major newspaper published a story titled, "Rotten Justice: What Prisoners Are Really Being Fed in America's Supermaxes." Inside were photos, moldy meat, spoiled milk, and documents signed by state officials approving expired shipments. It was everything Ghost and Reyes had gathered. The reporter said an anonymous source had mailed the evidence from an unknown correctional facility. But Ghost knew who had done it. It was Reyes. He wasn't dead. He had escaped transfer, and somehow, he'd made it out alive. Within days, lawmakers were demanding answers. The governor ordered an investigation. Inspectors raided prison kitchens across California, Colorado, and New York. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. Expired chicken from overseas. Recycled beans. Watered-down milk laced with cleaning chemicals. And suppliers making millions from state contracts while prisoners got sick and died. The investigation. The media exploded. News stations ran footage of trays filled with greenish mash and bread crawling with flies. Families of inmates began protesting outside prison gates. "They're human too," one woman shouted. "Even animals eat better than this." For the first time, the public saw what life behind bars really looked like. Not the Hollywood version. The real version, where every meal was a reminder that your life didn't matter. When federal investigators arrived at Pelican Bay, the kitchen was shut down. Guards stood silent as agents took samples of the food and photos of the storage rooms. In one freezer they found crates labeled, "Use by 2014. It was 2022. When the results came back, it confirmed what Ghost had written all along. Foodborne bacteria, unsafe levels of mold, and even traces of cleaning solution in the meals. The director of the state's prison food supplier was arrested for fraud. The warden was suspended, and the department quietly changed contractors. But none of it brought back Slim. None of it erased years of hunger, sickness, and humiliation. Ghost was still in solitary, forgotten again. He never saw the outside world react to his story. But one night, when a guard came to deliver his tray, he whispered, "You started something out there." And for the first time in years, Ghost smiled. The taste of freedom. Months later, a reform group called Feeding Justice pushed for a new law, the Prison Nutrition Transparency Act. It required all prisons to publicly disclose where their food came from, how it was stored, and how it was inspected. When the bill passed, reporters mentioned one name over and over, the inmate known as Ghost. No one knew his real name. No one knew where he was. But his notebook, smuggled through a loaf of bread, had changed everything. Inside solitary, Ghost received a letter from a lawyer. It was from Reyes. The note read, "They can silence our voices, but not the hunger for truth." And enclosed in the envelope, a photo of Slim's old cell, empty but clean. On the tray sat a real meal. Chicken, rice, vegetables, and a small slice of cake. A meal made for a human being. Ghost looked at the picture for a long time. Then he whispered the words he'd written hundreds of times in his mind. Prison food doesn't just feed bodies, it reveals souls. The price of the truth. Years passed. The story of Ghost became legend among inmates. A whisper that traveled cell to cell, prison to prison. No one had ever seen him since the day he was locked in solitary, but his name lived in every chow line, every tray, every time a prisoner dared to push the plate away. Then, one morning in 2025, a black SUV pulled up outside Pelican Bay. A lawyer stepped out, holding papers signed by a federal judge. Ghost was being released. When the door to his cell opened, light flooded in like fire. His beard was long, his eyes pale from darkness, but his voice was steady. He had served every day of his sentence, but the world outside had changed because of him. As he walked past the gate, the guard who once laughed at his protests said softly, "Guess you finally got your meal, huh, Ghost?" Ghost didn't answer. He just kept walking, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The hidden retaliation. But while the world celebrated him as a whistleblower, the system was quietly rewriting the story. Government officials denied knowing about the food scandal. The private contractors rebranded under new names. And the prisons that promised change? They quietly switched back to cheap suppliers once the headlines faded. The reform group Feeding Justice found itself targeted. Random audits, missing funding, and silent threats. Reyes went into hiding after receiving anonymous letters saying, "You talk again, and you'll vanish like the others." Even the reporter who broke the story found her office broken into, files gone, computer wiped. The truth was out, but those who told it were being erased. Ghost, now free but watched, lived in a small apartment near San Francisco. Every day he woke before dawn, the same time breakfast was served back in the yard. He'd pour himself a cup of black coffee and eat plain bread, the same way he had for years. Because no matter how far he'd come, the taste of prison never really left. The final revelation. One afternoon, a letter arrived at his door. No return address. Just a seal of the Department of Corrections. Inside was a photograph. It showed a tray of food. A brick of Nutriloaf. The caption underneath read, "Still being served." Ghost stared at the photo, his hands trembling. All those years, all that pain, and it was still happening. He picked up a pen and began writing again. This time, not on scraps of paper or toilet rolls, but on clean white pages that the world could see. The first line read, "They say you are what you eat." If that's true, then America's prisons are feeding its people the taste of punishment. The hunger that never ends. Prison food isn't just about calories or cost. It's about what a society believes its justice is worth. When food becomes punishment, hunger becomes a sentence. And the men inside, no matter how dangerous, remain a mirror to the system that feeds them. The camera pans across empty trays, cracked walls, and the sound of a single metal door closing. In 2025, over 1.2 million inmates in the United States still rely on private contractors for meals. In many facilities, Nutriloaf and similar disciplinary diets remain legal.